Good evening, everyone. We continue from where we left off yesterday, and we are carrying on with verse 19. Now, verse 19 is a new discourse or a new event. It says here, and then. So remember, each time you have this and then, you find that this becomes a new scenario. Now, as we look at the Hebrew way of narrative, from the previous verses, we saw that Avshalom was killed by Joab, and the young men who were with him stabbed him to death, buried him in a pit, and piled stones on it as a memorial. And in verse 19, it's after that episode, and you find that this is now a scene that takes place uh, in Jerusalem. It is a scene that you find that Zadok is the high priest, and they are back in Jerusalem. Ahimaaz is a son, and they all heard the news. And Joab is with them. So after all this said and done, Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, says, "Please let me run and bring the king news that the Lord has freed him from the hand of his enemies." Now, this word is run, and this would be very seldom do we see words like this. This is roots. This is really running fast. Basically, is to rush, is to run fast. Because most of the time we read the word walk. Very seldom we look at the word uh, rush or run. But this is what it means. Ahimaaz wants to get the news to the king. Now, this word news is a very important word. This is a verb. So it is bring news. The word bring news literally means to bear uh, bear news, uh, good news as well, or good tidings, uh, cheerful message, and you get the picture. And so this idea here is Ahimaaz wants to go and tell the king uh, that that the Lord has freed him. Now, this word freed is not really free. This word free uh, actually should say vindicate. I think vindicate is a good word here. Vindicate or avenged, uh, basically to show that David is is freed from all these encumbrances of Avshalom. You can also this word is actually coming from the word shafat, which also means judge, right? It also means to punish. And so this particular word, I think, would better be used as vindicate, I think, or avenge him from the hand of his enemies. In verse 20, we see Joab there. The word but is and then. And then Joab said to Ahimaaz, "You are not the man uh, to report this day, to bring the news this day." Uh, and, and it says, "And you shall bring news another day. Go another time. This is not the event for you." However, uh, however, it would be, but you shall bring no news this day because the king's son is dead. Now you need to understand that this whole passage that we are going through, for the rest of chapter 18 is about the news of the death of Avshalom. And if you are careful in noting the whole scenario, Yoav has taken lead. He's the general. Although he may have 1/3 the army, he is now taking charge to decide how to reveal the news to the king, because this is not good news. But in the eyes of Ahimaaz, he thinks it is good news. And so Yoav says, it is better that you bring no news today, none of these news, because it is not right for the priesthood to be involved in this case. That is that background. So I hope that you understand that Yoav doesn't want to get the priesthood involved. So instead, Yoav asked the Kushi. Kushi is a black person, a dark-skinned person. Some will translate this as Ethiopian. From the lineage of Ham. And says, go tell the king what you have seen. And he is one of those who have gone into battle. And so the Cushite bowed to Yoav and ran. Now, this word bow is to pay homage, really bow onto the ground, very much like the typical word that we translate as worship. And he ran. Now, this is what happens to Ahimaaz. Ahimaaz, after the Cushite has ran off, he wouldn't give up. And so Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said one more time to Yoav, whatever happens, right? Whatever happens, let me also run after the Cushite. And then Yoav said, why? Why do you want to run, my son? Since you have no messenger's reward for going, there is no reward. Why do you want to fight with the Cushite? Now in verse 23, he says, come what may, whatever happens, again, this is come what may, whether there is a reward or not, I will run. And so he said to him, run. And this would be Yoav. And then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain, and then he passed by the Cushite. The idea of pass by the Cushite means that he went ahead. He took a shortcut, I guess you can say. And so he went ahead. Now in verse 24 comes a different scenario. This scenario in verse 24 now focuses on David. Now, David was sitting between the two gates. Remember, he was there standing between the two gates, watching the army go out to fight. And then, this one is, and then the watchman went to the roof of the gate by the wall, and then raised his eyes, and then looked. And behold, a man was running by himself. This word is by himself, is alone. So the first person that arrives is Ahimaaz, who came ahead of the Cushite. In verse 25, Again, you see this. This is a series of actions, right? And then the watchman called out and then told the king. So he called out is also telling the king. This whole idea of the narrative, he was going to shout out, and what he did was to tell the king. It looks like an A and a B, right? And then we have this, and then what did he say? And then the king said, if he is by himself, there is good news in his mouth. And this word here, report, this is bearing good news, good tidings in his mouth. And he came nearer and nearer. He was walking and was coming nearer and nearer. Verse 26. And then the watchman saw another man running behind. And then the watchman called to the gatekeeper and then said, hey, there is another man also running alone. And then the king said, oh, this one also is bringing good news. So you can see that from the anticipation of David, that he hopes to hear good news. What good news do you think he was looking for? The good news that he was looking for was in hope that Avshalom would have survived this episode. Verse 27, there is an and then right here that is now left out of the translation. The watchman said, I see this is not think, this is I see. Right, verse 27, I see is not think. I see the one running in the form of the first one is like Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. So he looks like Ahimaaz. And then the king said, oh, this is a good man, right? This is from the priesthood. And so he must be coming with good news. Verse 28, then, and then when he approached, he called out and then said to the king. So you notice this is the style of Hebrew, right? He called out and said. So this is very much verbally. There's a verbal exchange of words. And then he said to the king, what did he say to the king? Now this word, all is well. The word all is well is right here. This word here is shalom. As in Hebrew greeting, right? You come and you say shalom. And he bowed down, prostrated means all the way to the ground before the king with his face to the ground. And then he said, blessed is the Lord your God, who has turned over the men who raise their hands against my Lord the king. And so the first thing here is to praise God. This is to praise God. Now notice this is spoken by the priest because he's the son of Zadok. Verse 29. And then the king said, is it well with the young man Avshalom? And the word here, is it well? The word well comes from this word, and this word is shalom. Is Avshalom shalom? That is basically what he's saying. Is Avshalom shalom? Is Avshalom at peace? And then you find the answer, and then Ahimaaz answered, when Joab sent the king's servant would be the Cushite, right? And your servant, and this would be Ahimaaz, I saw a great commotion. The idea of a commotion, it's defined as a crowd, right? Let's see, a crowd roaring, making a lot of noise. This is commotion. Basically, Ahimaaz is describing what he saw. And I did not know what it was. So this is the reference, is that the idea here is Ahimaaz is describing what he saw, and the Cushite is also going to describe what he saw, because the Cushite was in the battle. And so it's clear that Ahimaaz did not inform the king of what the Cushite is supposed to say. Verse 30, then the king said, okay, turn aside and stand there. And then he turned aside and stood still. So basically, he is now standing next to the king instead of facing the king. In verse 31, behold, look, the Cushite came. The Cushite arrived. This is the word came. And so this is an interpretation. And then the Cushite said, what did he say? Let my lord the king receive good news. The Cushite is bearing what he thinks is good news. For the Lord has freed you this day from the hand of all those who rose up against you. Now, this is exactly the words that Ahimaaz also said. That God has delivered him. Right? The word freed here, in verse 31 means to judge or to avenge or to vindicate from the hand of all those who rose up against you. Verse 32. And then the king said to the Cushite, this is the same question that was asked of Ahimaaz. Is it well with this man Avshalom? Again, I point out to you, this word here, is it well? Is this word here, Hashalom? It's a question, right? It's a question. Is Avshalom shalom? That's exactly what he says. It's Avshalom shalom. And then the Cushite answered, may the enemies of my lord the king and all those who rise against you for evil, be that young man. Is and basically he's saying this is implying the young man has died. Now, this is the news, and it's not good news for David. It's really bad news for David, right? Bad news for David. We will now go on to chapter 19. We are now looking at chapter 19, but in this screen that you see, this is 19, verse 1. That's in the Hebrew Bible. This one here is the English Bible. So in the Hebrew, 19 verse 1 is a continuation of chapter 18. And it says, then the king trembled. This is, and then after he heard the words of the Cushite, the king started to shake. Now, this is very important. The idea here is to, how should we say, to tremble, to shake, to quiver. Now, I'm not sure you can imagine how this looks like, but David is now shaking. All his hands, his whole body is shaking because of the news that Absalom had died. And then he went up to the chamber over the gate and then wept. So this one here is, and then he went up to the chamber. The chamber would be the upper room. He went to the upper room, or the, I guess you can say the roof room, because he goes up over the gate, and then he wept. Now this word wept is really shedding tears. And observe what David says. Now this is important. Observe what David says. David is saying this, and this is what he said as he was walking up. He says, Bnei Avshalom, my son Avshalom, Bnei Avshalom. If only I had died instead of you, Avshalom, Bnei. Now, you would see that he has mentioned his son, or my son, 8 times in the course of the next few verses. And it's important for us to realize that this is a picture of a man in tremendous grief. And this is over his son Absalom, who tried to usurp the throne and force him out of Jerusalem and run away. And yet the king's passion and the king's love for his son and the king's emotional bond with Absalom is so great. Having to lose Absalom is it's more than he can actually bear. This is verse 2 in the Hebrew Bible and verse 1 in the English Bible. Then it was reported to Joab, behold, the king is weeping, and he mourns for Absalom. Somebody went back to relay a message. And this word is reported, is not bearing good news. It's a totally different word. And so the victory of the day was turned into mourning for all the people, because the people heard it and said that the king is mourning over his son. Now, the idea here is the people would be thinking of victory. It should be a celebration. And then it turned to mourning. Why? Because David cannot handle the death of his son, death of Avshalom. Now, this is something we need to bear in mind. Verse 3. And the people entered the city. This word here is very strange word. This would be verse 4, right? Verse 4 in the Hebrew and verse 3 in the English Bible. It says, this word here is stealing in. That's really the word. Steal in very quietly. They are sneaking in. I guess you can say the word sneaking. They are sneaking in to the city that day, just as people who are humiliated or people who have lost the war is fleeing the war, has nothing to shout about. And so this is the word. They are sneaking in as if they have nothing to shout about. Verse 4. And then the king covered his face and cried out with a loud voice, Bani, Bani, Avshalom, Avshalom, Bani, Bani. Basically, he's really mourning for his son. Verse 5. And then Joab came into the house to the king and then said, this is going to be something that all of us need to pay attention to. This is Joab speaking to the king. And he's reminding the king who he is. Although he is the father of a son, but he is also the commander in general of the entire army. Today you have shamed all your servants who have saved your life today, and the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives, who were women, the lives of your concubines. The word shame, I think you can say that this word is embarrass. You have embarrassed. You have embarrassed. I guess you can say the word embarrass. You have disappointed. What else can you say? You have confused. This is the word shame here, right? You have made them dry, or you have dried up. Now, this word dry up means you dry up their jubilant. When they are supposed to be celebrating the victory, you have dried up their jubilant. I guess in today's colloquial way, we may say you have poured cold water, right, on them. Yeah, you have poured cold water. And that would be a good way of expressing it. Because these are your servants, and they have saved, how should we say, they have saved, this word save is not your traditional word, but it is in the same It's in the same idea. I guess you could say that they have uh, caused they have how should we say this? They have delivered, uh, gave escape, right? You can say that. Uh, I guess these two words are good. These are your servants who have, uh, well, I guess you can say saved, delivered, helped you escape, and the lives of your sons and the lives of your wives, or women, the lives of your concubines. And why did he say that he has shamed or embarrassed or disappointed or confused or dry up their jubilance? Because it says, you have loved those who hate you and you hate those who love you. This idea here is, in terms of love, you love those who hate you. It is by showing compassion and grief and demonstration of grief to Avshalom, who hates you. And by doing that, you have turned away those who love you. They have given their lives for you, those who have given themselves to fight for you. So, this is the Hebrew understanding of love. You gave yourself to the ones who have turned you away, and you have turned away those who have given themselves to you. For you have revealed today, you have reported to us, and you've shown us today that the chiefs and the servants mean nothing to you. Now, uh, this is a very damning, I guess, judgment. Our nothing means, uh, you take no regard. It seems like you don't care, right? For all these people who have given their lives for you. For I know today that if Avshalom were alive and all of us were dead, then it would be right as far as you are concerned. And this would mean in your eyes. And so Joab is trying to wake up David that in this grief, yes, you have your son who died, but you have your people who saved everyone's lives with their lives as they gave themselves to fight for you. But in your crying out and mourning for Avshalom, have caused them to be confused. Is that why is this not a victory? Why is this a funeral? Verse 7. Now therefore arise, go out, speak kindly to your servants. Now this is important, for I swear, and he is now making a threat, for I swear by the Lord, if you do not go out, then I am telling you that this is important, that no man will stay the night with you, and this will be worse for you than all the misfortune. And the word misfortune here is evil, the Ra, that has come upon you from your younger days until now. The threat is this: if David doesn't go out, uh, and speak, now this word speak kindly, uh, is speak to the heart of So we don't have these words here, right? To speak to the hearts, to the heart of your servants. And so he is telling David, if you don't go out and address your servants who have loved you, gave their lives, that's the Achav concept, then you will not have anyone standing by you. And this is a serious, serious threat. Verse 8. And then after this reminder, the king got up and then he sat at the gate. When they told the people, saying, behold, the king is sitting at the gate. And then all the people came before the king. Now, this city here is at Machanaim, right? Remember this, Machanaim. Yoav has gone back and forth from Jerusalem back to Machanaim. So now Israel has fled, each to his tent. Israel here would mean those with Avshalom. They have gone back. Verse 9. And then all the people were quarreling throughout the tribes of Israel. These are the tribes of Israel, all the tribes. Throughout the tribes, this is all of the tribes. These are the 12 tribes. The word quarreling, I guess you can say argued. They argued with each other. They quarrel. I think these are two good words to use. They quarreled or they argued. And then they said, the king rescued us from the hands of our enemies and saved us from the hands of the Philistines. And now he has fled out from the land from Avshalom. So they're saying that, well, the king was a hero, right? He has delivered us from the enemies, from Philistines, and now he ran away. What kind of a king is this? Verse 10. And Avshalom, whom we anointed over us. Notice this word anointed. The word anointed comes from the word mashak, right? Mashak. It is the one who is mashak is called the Mashiach, the Messiah, the anointed one, has died in battle. And then why are you silent about bringing the king back? This is important because these are discussions amongst the tribes of Israel. And I think that you find this not as everybody, mumbling away. I would think that these would be the elders, and they are wondering what to do next because they were the ones who made Avshalom king. Verse 11. Then the king sent word to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. Remember that Zadok is a high priest. Abiathar stepped aside for Zadok. And he said, speak to the elders of Judah or Yehudah. Why are you the last to bring the king back to his house? Since the word of all Israel has come to the king, even to his house. And so the decision of all Israel is to bring the king back. But this particular verse has to deal with the Judahites. Why are you not deciding? So talk to the elders there, verse 12. You are my brothers. You are my brothers. Remember, David is from Judah. So this is about speaking to the elders of Judah. It says, you are my bone and my flesh. Now, it's very similar to the Oriental expression, like in the Chinese, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? Why are you taking your time to decide? Verse 13. And he says to Amasa. Now remember Amasa. Amasa's mother is the sister of Zeruiah, who is the mother of Joab, right? And so Amasa was made the general of Absalom's army. And this is well, I guess you can say this is the nephew, right? So are you not my bone and my flesh? Again, uh, you have this bone and flesh, bone and flesh. And these denote intimate relationship. This is the familial bond. And so he says, may God do so to me and more so. May God do to me and even more if you shall not be appointed the commander of the army for me continually in the place of Joab. Now, this is a very interesting event, I would say. And that's also because you find that Joab had disobeyed his order to spare and treat Absalom gently. And so now Amasa is now appointed to the army of David. Verse 14. And then, and then David turned the hearts of all men of Judah as one man, so that they all have the same heart. This word, one man, right? As one man. This is ish echad. This is unity. They are all united. United with one mind. And they send word to the king saying, come back, you and all your servants, because they are occupying Jerusalem, right? Judah is taking charge of Jerusalem. And so in verse 15, and then, right here, and then the king returned. Return means turn back. This is turn back. Remember, he is in Machanaim, and now he turns towards Jerusalem. And then he came as far as the Jordan River. And the men of Judah came to Gilgal in order to meet the king, to escort the king across the Jordan. Now remember, Gilgal, in the book of Joshua, you find that uh, they that's the place where they would cross in the early days of the conquest. All right. And with this, I think you would find that this would be the beginning of the return to the city of David. Now, I want us to pause here today so that we can continue tomorrow for the rest of chapter 19, because there's a lot more to be uncovered from the chapter. But suffice for us for this evening that we can see how David is very human, how David succumbs to his grief for Absalom and forgets that he is king over all Israel. He forgets his army. And then when he regains his composure, that is when he plays his role as king once again. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.